The primary thing with customer-centric selling is that you're becoming a buying facilitator. You're not selling, you're not telling, you're not pitching. You're helping the customer on their buying journey.
Welcome to the Sales Expert Podcast, where we explore the world of sales from the perspective of industry experts and thought leaders. My name is Oisin Brown.
And I'm Dara O'Connor.
And this week's expert is Dave Elsner. And Dave, you're known as the tech sales coach. Dave, tell me, how did you get started in sales?
You know, I was born a salesman. My first sales story was that at 5 years old, I was upset that the Girl Scouts were making money selling cookies. So I took my allowance, bought some Oreos, and went door to door. My dad later told me I was creating fraud because he was a cop and made me go give all the money back. But from that point on, everybody kept telling me I needed to be a salesperson. So it started early.
From selling cookies, then what was the next stage of your career? How did it advance?
Yeah, you know, I was one of those kids that went door to door, washing cars, cleaning weeds, selling my services. I painted curbs. I washed windows. I was very entrepreneurial coming up. My first real sales job was cable TV, door to door, when it first came out in the 80s. And so I think that's what got me hooked, is I did really well in that. And then after graduating, I got my first business sales job as a phone system salesperson for the phone company.
Tell us a bit about the journey from Oreos and television into tech.
Yeah, like I said, my first real business job was phone systems. And so I spent 35 years in technical sales. And that's why I focus on the technical community, because I understand their language. I understand that when you're doing any kind of sales training, you have to know their products and services in order to communicate the best way to approach sales with those services. So we do things like customize our role plays with the customer solution in mind, in order to make it more effective and make the people retain what they're taught.
Is it possible for somebody that doesn't have a technical background to become a salesperson?
Absolutely. You don't need to be technical as a salesperson. You need to be curious and care more than anybody else. And so most technical companies have sales engineers that help you through the technical work. I recently just did a training for a company called Trellix, and 6 of the students were brand new into tech. And after 4 months with the training that they did, all of them are killing it because we teach them sales-ready messaging with enough technical flavor in it to make them dangerous. And then we teach them how to include their sales engineer in that process in order to get the technical value out of the customer. So I absolutely believe anybody that's good at sales can jump into tech for sure. People often measure sales performance by results, but I think it's also customer retention and the team you build after you make that initial sale. I've seen a lot of money made from a small customer like Groupon that, we got in and sold them a $10,000 solution, and they ended up becoming a $10 million a year customer. Because we did such a great job of taking care of them after the fact.
How do you maintain that customer relationship management?
Yeah, I like to run a program called Constant Touch. You also have to have customer loyalty where you're rewarding the customer. But, Constant Touch is a monthly touch base with the customer to see how it's going, see what's coming up new. If it's a big enough customer, you're doing a quarterly, what we call a quarterly business review, where you're looking at their technology roadmap and what's next. If it's a smaller customer, maybe it's an annual business review. But really, you've got to constantly be in touch with that customer, Otherwise, somebody else is going to swoop in and disrupt the momentum you had going.
So traditionally, we would have had key account managers who would have looked after the customer once the sale went through, and that they would be involved in a lot of upselling, a lot of additional product add-ons as well to move and keeping close to the customer in case any competitors were going around. Is that kind of role? Is it still there? Is it something that comes in at the beginning, or is that really a role that's handed over once the sale is made?
Yeah, I mean, companies do it different ways. I always ran it that if the salesperson sold it, they own that account forever. I didn't think it was fair to move it into somebody else's hands because they put all the hard work into establishing that relationship, and therefore we want that salesperson to grow with it. But you also see companies where you've got hunters and farmers. And so, the hunters come in and establish the account, and then they bring, like you said, a key account manager in to maintain and grow that account. And then the third scenario you see is as that customer becomes bigger, maybe they move from commercial accounts up into key accounts and then up into an enterprise account. And as they grow, they get more support to maintain that relationship. So those are the three scenarios, but I personally always ran it where they keep the account as long as they stayed with me.
I think that is true because you really build the relationship. And now we've looked at the side of the table from the perspective of the sales team. Generally, let's look at who's on the other side of the table as a potential customer, because it's never just one person. It can be purchasing, it can be a CEO, it can be a department head. In general, what do we see when we look across the table?
Yeah, I mean, in tech sales, we're coming into the IT department primarily. And so that starts at the CIO, maybe the chief technology officer, a VP of IT, manager, directors. And then larger companies will have segmented technology teams, like they'll have a data center team, they'll have a collaboration or voice team, and then maybe they have an infrastructure team. And so, what I teach is it's important to get all key players involved in the sales process. Like you have a champion that you start working with, but you really got to spread your wings and get to know all of the key players. I tell a story. I was really successful at selling phone systems. And one of the reasons was I would go office to office and talk to every person about the features that they wanted on their phone. Therefore, I got to know all of the key players. But the most important person was the receptionist who answered the phone. I could get key insights from that receptionist about how the call flows work and take it back to my champion and key decision makers and open their eyes to new things that could be done to improve their environment. And so, you start with the IT department, but you really got to broaden your horizons within that customer and get to know as many people as you can. Implementers, users, you name it, get to know those people in the sales process.
And in bigger companies, you are looking at the procurement or finance. The people who sign off on the check are very important in that. But a great qualifying question up front in any sales interaction before you even start is who else needs to be in this room?
Absolutely. I also like to plant seeds like, who will review my contracts? And they tell me the legal department or our CFO or something like that. And so therefore I offer a copy of my contracts, and I know if they take it to the CFO, then they're engaged. They're an engaged buyer. And I consider them more qualified when they take action like that. You also ask them, do you go to RFP, request for proposal, or will this go to the purchasing department to be shopped? So you figure out those little nuances in their buying process, and you use those as what I call engagement bait. You throw out the contract, and if they take it to legal, then they're engaged.
Yeah. And that way you're really pulling in the people that matter.
That's right.
It's a form of qualification, really. Dave, sorry, go on. Yeah, Darry, you go.
Dave, can I ask you a question? And it's something I'm always fascinated with when somebody takes that big plunge and goes out on their own and sets up their own consultancy business. At what stage did you decide that you were going to set up the tech sales coach?
Yeah, so, my last sales VP job was a very big job. I ran all of Dimension Data for the Americas, 450 salespeople, 37 offices, 80-hour weeks, traveling all over the place. And I came to a realization that I needed more work-life balance. And so I left that big paying job to get my life back and get freedom to do what I want and when I want. And so I left Dimension Data in 2016, started this business. And in the beginning, it was all referral-based networking. It was all the people I met in my career, the hundreds of people that I worked with helped me launch this business by hiring me. And so I would come in as a sales consultant and quickly learn that what I enjoyed the most was training, coaching, and mentoring the sales teams. So a consulting gig to work with a sales team turned into me developing their sales skills to improve their results, which then turned into this sales training business. And I just love it. It's the best getting out in the field and working with these teams to improve their skills and results.
How do you adapt to emerging technologies then within the sales process?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the advent of AI and all of the tools that we have out there. There's tools that record your calls and then make recommendations about how you could have answered that question better. And so I think it's important to understand those technologies so that as we're doing the training, we can weave it in. For instance, my sales training, we teach them to always send a follow-up letter after every conversation to capture notes. What were your goals, concerns? What's our next steps? And there's a tool called Chorus AI that can record your entire conversation. Therefore, it makes that letter writing much easier for the salesperson. And not only that, but they don't have to take notes while they're doing discovery with the customer. And so there's a lot of really cool technologies out there. I've been using ChatGPT like Google. I ask it questions and we have a conversation. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time, I think, both for sales and for training.
Yeah.
And marrying the two together.
And what are the, taking into consideration all these new technologies, what are the key considerations when integrating sales technologies with existing CRM systems, such as our traditional Salesforce or whatever CRM we're using, not to upset the already established flow?
Well, I mean, one of the chief complaints of most salespeople is, 60% of my time is spent on administrative. And all of these tools are taking and giving them that time back. The discovery tools where you can discover the persona of a potential buyer and what their likely goals are, Chorus to capture notes and then to insert those into the CRM without having to redo the notes again. AI is great for personas as well. I can ask ChatGPT, what are the top concerns of a CIO at a healthcare company in America? And now I have a conversation list that when I approach that CIO at a hospital, I'm going to hit on their most likely goals. And so I see it as a huge time saver for all of us.
And I think it's interesting how you talked about the I suppose data input being I suppose it's a little pet hate amongst certain salespeople, but it's something that has to be done. We need to put in the information to get the information. But one thing that is good is everything nowadays can be done on the phone. You're not going back to the office. You probably have a laptop, or you're doing it on a tablet or on the phone in the car after you come out of your meeting. So it's you should be capturing the information in real time.
Yeah, I mean, most of my students, I do a monthly one-on-one with everybody that goes through my training for a year. And I don't know, 95% of them are still working from home. I do calls when they're in their cars and they have their iPad up while they're driving. Shame on them, but it happens. And so things have definitely changed. We are in a remote work anywhere world now. I see people going to Cancun and working for the week because they can.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
And
Dave, with that remote working environment or that remote training, does the tech sales coach, is everything online, or do you come to the classroom, and what do you find works best for
Yeah.
you and your students?
I mean, personally, I like the live workshops where we're all together in a room for, 2 or 3 days, because I think the interaction and engagement provides better retention. But we do all of our classes virtually. We just have to spread them out where it's 1 hour blocks over an 8-week period of time, and they're given homework. We do role plays virtually still. But if you ask me, I prefer the live classes where we're all together.
And are you doing a mix of both currently?
Yeah, I do. Most of my social selling workshops are virtual, because I can go online and show them how to work LinkedIn properly, for instance. Most of my sales methodology workshops on customer-centric selling are live. And it kind of surprised me after the pandemic. I thought everybody was going to go all virtual, but every class that I set up, they were like, no, we want to do it live. We want to get these people back together again because they've been separated for so long. So, yeah, I do social selling virtually and the customer-centric selling live.
And tell us a little more about social selling. I think it's somewhere every salesperson can improve. While a lot of salespeople love to get out there, love to talk, love to put themselves out there, oftentimes when you go and look at their LinkedIn profile or what they're sharing online, it doesn't reflect the person you just met.
No. LinkedIn is about building your personal brand as a subject matter expert and leveraging the power of networking to get to know people, to use referral-based networking and commonality. And so what I teach is, hey, let's make your profile represent the value of you and your brand and what you're selling. It can't look like a resume. I don't care that you're at 130% of quota. I don't care that your top skill is negotiation. I care what it is that you have to offer to help me. And so step number 1 is getting that profile up to date. Then we teach them how to search and find their prospects on LinkedIn. And we have them follow and engage with those people, because the beauty of LinkedIn is the notifications. When I look at your profile, you get a notification that says, Dave just looked at your profile. Then when I follow you, you get another notification. And then when I engage with your content, you're getting additional notifications. Those things create curiosity from that potential buyer. And eventually they're going to come look at my profile where they see all the value. Then I can start a conversation now that I've drawn them in. And in essence, what I'm doing is I'm warming up my name and my brand with the customer before I break out into email and phone calling. And then my open rates go way up because they recognize my name already. And the fact is, nobody wants to be cold called anymore. Nobody wants a cold email anymore. Most business nowadays happens because I was referred, I was recommended, or I got noticed on a social platform while they happen to be looking for a solution. So I still get, I post daily on LinkedIn sales tips and advice, and I'll get people reaching out to me from a post they saw a year ago, because they see that consistent. They're like, hey, I remember that post you did a year ago where you were talking about qualifying. And I want to talk about doing something like that for my teams. And so, it's consistent engagement, consistent content to build a brand and build that referral-based networking up. I don't do outbound anymore. All of my business comes inbound because of things like this, the podcasts, where I'm getting myself noticed. And then the stuff that I do on social draws people to me as well.
And while you can be engaging with your potential customers on LinkedIn, and we mentioned podcasts, which is one, but what kind of content can we be creating to put ourselves in an expert level salesmanship or salespersonship
Yeah.
profile?
Yeah, the biggest mistake I see people make on LinkedIn is they just repost their company content and they don't say anything about it. They just repost it. And nobody wants to see marketing stuff. What they want is they want your thoughts on the subject. And so you need to be seen as a subject matter expert. And I encourage people to post research and studies to help customers in their journey while they're doing their research about something, top 10 lists. And you've got to curate content from people like Gartner and Forrester, the independents, not some other company's opinion. And so, I tell them, 2 pieces of marketing content with your thoughts per week, and then 2 curated pieces of content, that you find on Google or another internet search engine. But the important thing is in the post itself, you've got to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about as a subject matter expert. Don't just repost an article and say, hey, this is a great read. Tell them why it's a great read to encourage them to actually read it. And at the same time, building your brand up as an expert in your field.
And I would add to that and encourage any salesperson out there to look at creating your own content, because the technology is so accessible and usable. Even look at creating a podcast. Look at creating a YouTube video channel. It doesn't have to be Hollywood style
No.
broadcast, but it's from you, which is the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing is that when I do a business/personal post, I actually get a lot more engagement. And I think it's because I'm allowing people to get to know me better. For instance, my wife and I are in a cornhole league where you throw the cornhole sacks into the holes. I don't know do they do that in Ireland?
No,
you'll have to explain that one.
Tell us more.
So it's 2 boards, roughly 30 feet apart, and you're throwing a sack of corn into a hole. We call it cornhole here. So my wife and I play that every week. And last season, I got the most improved award. And I was a little insulted because I thought I was good before. And so I posted about it and posted, the encouraging words my wife gave me. And that post went viral, not my business post. It's posts like that because it allowed people to get to know me and my personal brand in a different way. And so if I was to say, a 5th post every week, 2 research, 2 marketing, do a business personal post. Talk about your morning routine or something like that, or something funny your kids said, and you get a lot more engagement.
And people can identify with the human in you. Right. That they identify with the person behind the business. That's who we all are.
Yeah.
And in terms of social selling, I'm always curious, is it only LinkedIn? Is there other places people can go?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the largest business conversation in the world. 930 million users, 300 million decision makers, 500 million people are active daily. I know there's a lot of people that are doing Twitter. I know there's a lot of people doing, TikTok. I just don't see my ideal customers there on Twitter and TikTok. I do think YouTube is another great channel because it's the second most searched engine in the world. And so I think you need to have some of your video content up on YouTube to attract people to you. If somebody goes to YouTube and types, I want to learn how to sell, I want one of my videos to come up and draw them back to my website or draw them back to my LinkedIn profile. But for me, I'm primarily 100% LinkedIn.
So Dave, how do you entice people typically in a technical environment, typical engineers, how do you entice them into the world of sales?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of engineers that wanted to get into sales, because they see salespeople making so much money. But the first thing is you got to set realistic expectations. Sales engineers are paid very well. And most of the time it's 80 to 100% salary. Whereas when you get into a sales job, it's 50-50 or 60-40. And so it's a more leveraged compensation plan. And the second realistic expectation is, unless you have a bunch of customers that are going to follow you and you have to go out and build, it takes a good 12 to 18 months to build the run rate. And so, when an engineer approaches me about getting into sales, realistic expectations first, and then you've got to train them to be less technical. The problem is that they're going to have all the answers, right? And so when a customer says, I need a video solution, they're going to jump to a conclusion. And so you got to teach that engineer to slow down and still ask the right questions to be a successful salesperson. And so I'll tell you quite honestly, sales engineers, when they convert to sales, are quite successful most of the time if they have the right training and coaching, because they come with so much good technical credibility. The other thing I see is I've seen people in IT departments at large customers. I just talked to one yesterday. He's now at a VAR as a salesperson, and he's doing really well because he came from the customer environment and understands their challenges. Therefore, his new customers respect him in a different way.
Dave, talk to me, just to change gears for a minute. Talk to me a bit about customer-centric selling and some of the key elements of learning about that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, customer-centric selling, I think first of all, I think it's the best methodology out there, and there's a lot of them. And they're all very similar in certain ways. We all do goal identification. We do discovery, where you try and find the value in your offer. We all have a qualification process, a sales process control process, negotiation skills. But the difference with customer-centric is that it's customized. And so we spend about 40 hours customizing the training material to include all of the customer's solutions. Therefore, when they go into training, they're learning real world. They're not learning how to sell a pen or a pencil or something generic to ABC company. They're learning how to sell their specific solution. And then I like to say I combine that with my industry expertise and knowledge. And therefore, they're getting real world history scenarios from me about when they ran into a challenge, how it's best handled in the technical world of selling. And so the primary thing with customer-centric selling is that you're becoming a buying facilitator. You're not selling, you're not telling, you're not pitching. You're helping the customer on their buying journey through great questioning-based etiquette that comes with qualification notes throughout. You're seen as very professional because of our follow-up letters and our action items that we create. And you're differentiated from the competition because of the way that you helped. At the end of the day, it's all about being the salesperson that cares the most. Whoever cares the most usually wins. And so, really customer-centric selling gives them those skills to be that person that cares the most.
And if we were to give one tip for any salesperson to up their game in sales, what would it be?
Understand your customer's goals and outcomes. I mean, that is step number one. The buying process has changed because buyers have access to a lot of information now. They have manufacturers telling them what to do. They can go to the internet. They can see it on LinkedIn. And so usually in their mind, they've already done their research, and a salesperson isn't engaged until they have a vision as to where they're going. And so what we need to do is get in and understand what are their goals and what do they want to accomplish. What are the outcomes that they desire as a starting point so we can help them on the journey? So that would be at step one, get a goal.
Dave, that's brilliant, and thanks for your time today. If our listeners would like to learn a little bit more about Dave Elsner and the Tech Sales Coach, where can they find you?
Yeah, I've got a website, thetechsalescoach.com. I'm on LinkedIn, the Tech Sales Coach, or Dave Elsner. And then the email is dave@thetechsalescoach.com. Thank you.
Dave, thank you. That was brilliant.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Dave.